Hello, it's Andrew Stothert here from Brand Vista. This is the second film that I've done in this series, and what I want to talk about today is what I've learned and what we've seen in the last 101 days that can really help us run our businesses in the future, and what are the kind of clues that we're picking up, the way people are working and how we've changed and stuff. The first film was about my first 5 decades of working and what I learned from that, but this is a much more intense learning period that every single one of us have gone through, and I think there are some great things that we can pick up and take forward as we go on. And the first one that really is to me fascinating is the wonderful celebration of the key workers of this country. They've seen us through a terribly difficult and chaotic time. We're beginning to open up now. We still don't know what the future looks like. But for all of that time, they've looked after us, be it in the hospitals, be it in the shops, in food supply, in distribution channels, all these places where the invisible people who normally just do and they're unseen have really been there for us, and they've looked after us and they've kept our lives going. So I think reflecting on that and transferring that back into the business and understanding who your key workers are is going to be absolutely critical. These are the people who are right at the front end. They're dealing with customers day to day. They are the touch points of the business. And if they're not engaged, if you're not respected, if they're just treated as numbers, then they'll just act like that. So we need to really find out new ways of developing employee experiences that really help them blossom and help them really do amazing things for the business and its customers, so that those customers gain a respect for that company. And I think customer respect is going to become a really important part of future measurements, rather than just customer loyalty, which is a mathematical calculation of repeat purchase as far as I can see. But it is that customer respect that we need to look for. That will come from many of those key workers, and even the product developers who work in laboratories or in engineering suites or whatever it is, even the finance guys who make sure the bills are right and everything's going. These are all absolutely critical delivery points that maybe we haven't spent enough time considering. We should actually celebrate those people within our businesses and just really give them a kind of real buzz and a real leadership and vision for what's going on. So there's that combination of the employee experience really feeding into the customer experience, which will then generate the revenues that we seek to generate, but as an outcome rather than a sort of input sort of thinking sort of point of view. Second one is I've really been deeply moved and impressed by some of the leadership activities going on at this period of time. I've also been pretty upset and just distraught by some of the other leadership sort of areas where people just are acting in a kind of really old world sort of attitude. But for those leaders who are getting out there, they're getting on the ground, they're seeing their people, they're using their own internal communication mediums to show that they are out there caring and respecting people, has been absolutely brilliant. Because after all, if you as a leader aren't prepared to do something, then why should any of your team? Why should they? They're just, they're not. It's a relationship here between the top and the front end, all the way through the business. And if you're not prepared to do something, then I'm buggered if I'm going to as an employee, because actually, as Jung had it, you're defined by what you do, not what you say you're going to do. And never has that been truer at this moment in time. There is again a terrible aspect of hubris where some leaders just regard themselves above everything else, and I think those leaders will be found out. Mainly because they just act in a way that is alien to this new world that we are living in and going to be living in the future. So I think keep a really clear view, if you are a leader, that you need to be down there and looking after it. The next one is about getting the basics right. Now is not the time to be creating wow moments and all those crazy things, but we've just got to do the basics really, really well, because that's what people want. We've got barriers for our customer experiences in there quite legitimately through the concerns for keeping social distancing going, making sure that everybody is safe and clean and all those things. That's a barrier that adds friction, but actually with great people doing great things, those barriers can be made to be acceptable and manageable, really. But you can't get the basics right unless you have a very clear vision of where you're going, a clear purpose for what you're doing. So driving the basics in the style of how you want them delivered, and making sure they're delivered consistently, and everybody is clear about it. And you're getting rapid feedback from the people who are seeing the customers to understand how we need to change and adapt rapidly in the ever sort of changing world. Without that kind of rapid feedback, you can't do anything nowadays if you're waiting a week for a report or a month for a report. So we've got to find ways of feeding back these things to help us improve on a high pace environment that we kind of live in. And I think authenticity and quality are going to be absolutely critical to that, doing the right thing for the right people, but doing it with the quality that people want. Just having a generic kind of bland sort of it'll just about do, nearly there is good enough sort of thing. It's just really, we can see it before the lockdown occurred, how some of the brands in, say, casual dining areas were in decline because they just weren't good enough. They were not authentic. They weren't real, and they just really lost their way. Unilever have a great saying, which is brand do and brand say. So the communication is all very well, but unless you're actually delivering on your promises, then you're really not going to get very far in this interconnected world we live in. And how do you keep that thing going? Well, the other thing that we've seen and learned, and actually been very much a part of during the lockdown process, is the ability to gather diverse views, opinions and experiences from across the business. So breaking down, busting those silos and working across the business, because people in one department will have some great ideas. They'll see some great things about another department, and rather than it being seen as sort of criticism and sort of negative observation or putting them down or whatever it is, we've seen it as being really energetic, really energizing people to really get involved and engage and answer problems in a different sort of way, because you have that diversity of opinion. If we're all in one department thinking one thing, you're going to get one answer. And it's the old hammer and nail situation. So long may that last. And I think really seeking the diverse opinions of people and getting them engaged has done nothing but enrich the solutions that people have come up with in the chaos that is where we've been going. And it's this cross-fertilization that is extraordinary. And finally, pace. We have done things in the last 101 days that would usually take about 2 years to do, be triplicated and duplicated in terms of approval processes and likewise. And I said in my last video, I mean, we're working on a Pareto lifestyle now, I think, where you get things about 80% right, get it in there and then iterate it and develop it over time. And it's not going to slow down. We're going to have pace throughout everything, and in fact probably even more pace as we open up. And we're now going into a lot of the things opening up, although we have got issues with local lockdowns and things. But generally, as we're opening up, we're going to need to learn quickly and act quickly, and so cut down lines of communication, form teams that work, diverse teams that work across the business. So again, you can get solutions really working very, very much more quickly. So if I kind of sum all of that up, really, I think you've got to have a clear vision and purpose. It's a critical navigation tool, and it's not about just long-term thinking. It guides the short-term decision making. It keeps you going as you chop and change. I'm a sailor, so sometimes things don't go according to plan. The weather changes, or the tide changes, or whatever it is, and you've got to do something different. So, but you're still going to the same port. How you get there, it may be a bit longer, it may be a bit shorter, it may be a bit quicker, it may be a bit slower, but you're still going to get to the same port. And that's where the role of the vision and purpose that you've got in what's going on. And there's a new team in town, really, and this is a combination of your team and your customers. And that team is basically, they've got many of the same needs and unmet needs, and without the two of them, you don't have a business. And certainly without your employees and your team there, you really don't have a hope in hell of getting a decent customer experience going. And you can't only digitise it, you have to have the combination of humans getting involved in it. Pace, got to move with pace. We've got to be guided, that pace has got to be guided by the vision, which enables you to move with pace, because you kind of got a kind of view of where you're going. So let's just do it, let's see how it goes. Then you've got adaptability and the diverse sort of stimulus that you can get, both from within your own business, but outside. What are the kind of other things that are happening that you can learn from and then take on board and then use that to innovate? And I think in summary of everything, I suppose I would revert to Mr. Jim Collins here of Good to Great and his Stockdale paradox. And if you haven't ever seen him talk about it, then there's a brilliant YouTube film on it, just put Stockdale paradox in. And that is basically that we all have to face the brutal truth of where we are now, because we don't know what the answer is, we don't know what the outcome is, but we must also at the same time be driven by the belief that in the end we will prevail. And that is what I think we've learned in 101 days. I hope it's helpful, and thank you for giving me some time. Goodbye and stay safe and good luck.